Hello and welcome to part 4 of a class, the empowerment of people. In this section, we're going to talk about the leadership use and potential abuse of power. In a classical organizational structure, power flows down from the top executives to the managers and supervisors to the frontline workers, and support flows upwards. In other words, frontline workers are supposed to support their managers and supervisors who are supposed to support their top executives. And this is true in the majority of hierarchical organizations today. However, in many organizations, they're taking a bottom-up or an upside-down pyramid approach to leadership, and this is actually very progressive. We flip the pyramid and we see that top executives are responsible for keeping the mission and strategies clear, and they support the managers, supervisors, and team leaders who help the frontline workers to do their job and solve problems. So they support the frontline workers who, again, provide direct service affecting customer client satisfaction. And the frontline workers directly serve the customers and clients, the ultimate beneficiaries. And so this places the customers and clients at the top of the pyramid, which is really where they should be, because if we define power as access to resources, and those who have power provide access or can take away access to resources, we see that customers and clients in traditional business and other organizations are really the most powerful. Yet the top executives have got this backwards. They see themselves as most powerful. But when we look at the true source of power, we see that the upside down pyramid is actually much more accurate. Upside down pyramid organizations are characterized by servant leaders, and they show commitment to people through providing access and giving contact, availability, and support to the members of the organization, communicating and meeting with people on a regular basis, and then supporting people, giving feedback, something called feed forward, praise, and support, even on a routine basis. The servant leadership philosophy can be summed up very easily. We make a living by what we get, and we make a life by what we give. So servant leadership is dedicated to serving a higher purpose. And this is why we talked last week about a credo or a philosophy or a particular approach to your organization, what the mission and the purpose is. Because the servant leader gives themselves over to that purpose or to that credo and does everything they can to support the other members of the organization doing the same. We can see in the military, this is a group where we have a mission-oriented group where we have our mission is primary, or mission first, soldiers always. We have 18-year-olds led by 20-year-olds, led by 25-year-olds. So we see this situation as giving over really in a way that matches the servant leadership model. One of the areas around participative leadership that it's important to understand is the beliefs and common values. And so participative leaders support full and free communication regardless of rank. In other words, if you are a CEO, you don't keep your door closed. And this actually, unfortunately, is true in academia. This is frequently not the case. Full and free communication among academic administrations can be difficult. A second is reliance on consensus to manage conflict, getting everyone to agree, even if they agree to disagree. But the decision process of a participative leader is consensus-based. The third is that influence is based on technical competence rather than personal whim. In other words, you're basing it on data and information rather than capricious choice. The fourth belief and value is in creating an atmosphere or a culture that permits and encourages emotional expression. In other words, you're not stuffing emotion, because participative leaders understand that it's just going to come out later, and it may come out in ways that are unforeseen. And the fifth, and probably arguably the most important, is being willing to cope with and mediate the inevitable conflicts on rational grounds. And so there's an active form of conflict resolution with participative leadership. One of the ways that we can understand empowerment is by looking at a continuum, where this is also known as a typology. On the left, we have slavery, where there's just the individuals have no power. And on the right, we have Israel and the kibbutz, where everybody has power, everybody can decide anything. The industrial sweatshops and scientific management were the first step towards gaining power for employees, and we see collective bargaining, and which supported the suggestion box. We saw human relations training, and then the job enrichment and employee opinion surveys grow out of that. The Japanese at the end of World War II started things called quality circles, which were reflected in America in quality improvement teams. And in Sweden, we have something called an industrial democracy. America has even gone beyond that to take on self-directed work groups. And in Germany, labor works with management to co-determine the fate of the organization. So we can see here to the left, we have all the power vested in the leaders. And on the right, we have power vested in all members. It's much more equally distributed. Participative leadership is really important because the democratic process is the best procedure that has yet been devised among many different procedures. Participative leadership really promotes decision-making among all individuals because it gets everyone involved in the decisions, which means they have more commitment and buy-in to the eventual outcome. Participative leadership is about safeguarding individuals and allowing them to fulfill their roles and functions in the organization and supporting them in making decisions that affect their daily lives. So it's a really important both psychological as well as operational strategy for improving organizational performance and improving leader-follower relations. There are many different types of power that leaders can use. Reward power is the capacity to offer something of value as a means of influencing others. This can be money or non-quantitative rewards. Coercive power is about punishing, applying a negative reinforcement, or actually a undesirable reinforcement as a means of influencing others. Legitimate power is just the exercise of authority, approval or denial based on a position power, or rights of office. And information power comes from having access to data and information and news of importance to others. Reward power can be summarized: if you do what I ask, you will be rewarded. Coercion: if you don't do what I ask, you will be punished. Legitimacy can be summarized as because I am the leader, you should do as I ask because I'm legitimate. And finally, information: I have important information, so you should do as I ask. As contrasted with the power of position, there are different sources of power based on the person themselves. The first is the expert power, capacity to influence others because of specialized knowledge or skill. Second is referent power, the capacity to influence others because of the desire to identify with the leader. This is typical of charismatic leaders. The fourth is rational power, is capacity to influence others because of a well-developed problem-solving ability. This is a result of education. And charisma power is the ability to motivate and inspire others to action by just a force of personality. This is also related closely to referent power. Expertise can be a source of special knowledge and skill. Reference is a person with whom others want to identify as a result of what they've achieved or perhaps who they are, what they represent in the world. Rationality is a rational problem-solving ability. Charisma is sort of a force that motivates and energizes people. One of the important constructs that's very critical in leadership, especially around authority and use of power, is psychological size. And the psychological size is basically the power relationship between the amount of power that leaders and followers have. And it's important because it's easy to abuse once a person has been appointed to a position that has leadership authority, that has authority over resources and can influence the outcomes for many employees. There's a lot of different factors that contribute to psychological size. I mean, The first is that you've got a high status position. You tend to use terminal statements that just don't allow any disagreement. Tend to maintain more of a formal or distant manner, perhaps have a know-it-all superior attitude, or you just have a commanding physical appearance. Sometimes you'll use sarcasm, ridicule, making fun of others, or perhaps even cruel and punishing remarks. You can even sometimes be abusive and interrupt and shout at others or publicly criticize others. And so really what you want to do is avoid these abusive behaviors, and really avoid any behavior that demeans or intimidates other people. And what you want to do is equalize the concept of psychological size so that the power distribution equally. And one of the ways to do this is through two-way communication. I mean, the first is just stop talking and start listening. Put the talker at ease. Show the person that you want to listen. Get into a situation or a room or an area where the distractions are gone, and then empathize with the other person. Be patient. Hold your temper. Don't fly off the handle with them. Just take it easy on the argument and criticism. And again, go back to Stephen Covey and seek first to understand, then to be understood. Asking questions and clarifying, and then again, just stop talking and start listening. This is another set of activities that you can undertake to raise psychological size. You can model an honest and an open style of communication. You can be patient, allow time for people to change, and make a sincere effort to draw people out without constantly evaluating their remarks. And so these are methods that you can do to equalize the psychological size and raise the psychological size of the followers. Again, we just talked about these. Stop talking to give others a chance to talk. Help the other person feel free to talk. Show the person that you want to listen by body language and remove distractions. Emphasize, hold your temper and count to 10. This can be very difficult sometimes. Go on easy on argument and criticism, even if you have something you feel you must say. Instead, just hold your tongue. Instead, ask questions. And encouraging the speaker to explain themselves and clarify what they're saying. Again. So if we want to empower people, we want to distribute power more equally in an organization, how do we do it? The first is simply to trust people, trust that they will do the right thing given the situation, the resources, and the authority that you've provided for them. Second is to invest in people, give them the skills and capabilities necessary to perform what you're asking them to do. The third is to recognize accomplishments, realize that people like to be recognized for what they've done, and reinforce why it's important to the organization's purpose and credo. Another one is to decentralize decision making, allow more people to be involved, but yet at the same time allow an appropriate amount of people to be involved so decisions that need to be made rather quickly can be made quickly, but yet involve the key decision makers and the people who are going to be living the consequences. And then 5, view work as a cooperative effort rather than a competitive effort. Competitive cultures tend to self-destruct. I know that I've been associated with a few of those. And cooperative efforts work better and are more sustainable over time. Workplace is changing. If we look at businesses in terms of structure, the traditional workplace is oriented around functional departments, but the new workplace is around work teams, a much more flexible structure. The traditional workplace is focused on cost, but the new workplace is focused on customer satisfaction and achieving customer-based results. The traditional workplace was oriented around inspecting for errors, making sure that you caught it before it went out. But the new workplace is about building in things that will continuously improve your processes so that nothing goes out that's bad in the first place, so there's no need to catch it. The standards in a traditional workplace were used as internal controls, but in the new workplace, it's world-class requirements. It's things that are built in to make the organization function more effectively. And leadership in the traditional workplace has been autocratic, but in the new workplace, it's much more democratic, much more servant leadership, much more participative. This is a rather interesting chart. This chart offers some key insights. This is interesting, is that in most organizations, the people prefer to go to their immediate supervisors, and what they actually go is to their immediate supervisors. If the immediate supervisor is not there, if they're not implementing leadership, if they're not being a leader, people will then go to the grapevine, although they do not prefer it. They prefer much other things higher than the grapevine. They prefer small group meetings, or they prefer top executives. But the grapevine is one of the least preferred areas of information, but it's accessible. And so the lesson here is that supervisors need to make themselves accessible and need to act as leaders so that they can disseminate the information necessary for the organization to run properly. Another interesting aspect of this is bulletin boards. The actual rank is, people use this as a number 4, but they prefer it as a number 9, so that the bulletin boards are not that great, although so people kind of look at them as they more or less they're there, so as necessary evil they have to use them. There are many challenges facing today's leaders, and these are some important ones. The first one is creating work environments where people feel safe. This is especially true around hazardous materials, hazardous chemicals, and it's probably some places where you've worked as an environmental manager. Second is fostering truth-telling in all dealing. This can be very difficult, especially with publicly held corporations, because the managers and the leaders will tend to hide information that can be viewed in a negative way by shareholders. And in hierarchical organizations, where the support flows upwards and the power flows downwards, the lower level managers and employees will tend to tell those who are in charge what they want to hear, because they want to be promoted, they want to be moved up in the organizations. And so truth telling can be severely damaged. Another one is articulating clear and consistent goals and values. This is very important in many organizations, especially those who are in a highly turbulent environment, with a lot of change, or things are just changing constantly in the technology area, or environmental impact area, or even in climate change. Articulating a clear and consistent set of goals and values is very important. Because it really keeps everybody on track and keeps followers all aligned. Finally, the fourth, especially in turnaround organizations, is really important: facing and resolving dysfunctional practices. This can be very tough. It requires a tolerance-based mindset, a growth-based mindset. It requires leaders to understand who they are and have self-confidence in what they are able to achieve. So these are the 4 key challenges, and I think that if we are going to be successful as leaders, we need to take these on. W. Edwards Deming was a management philosopher and management consultant. He had actually 14 points that we're going to cover here, and these were an excellent management philosophy for implementing leadership in a progressive organization. The first is to create consistency and continuity of purpose, have a mission and a vision and a credo, and live it. Second is to set high standards, make the standards very high. And third is to eliminate dependence on mass inspection. In other words, build quality of the services into the processes that are used. Reduce the number of suppliers so that you can reduce your costs with the different suppliers and the time it takes to manage them. Recognize that the systems are 85% of your problems, and the workers and the employees are about 15% or even less. So deal with problems at the systems level. 6 is to improve job training. Make sure people understand what they need to do. Provide a higher level of supervision. In other words, make sure that people get the guidance and the information and the support that they need. Now, a real key one is to break down barriers between departments. Make sure that departments work together. This is a cooperative effort. The number 9 is a true leadership task. Stamp out fear by encouraging open, two-way communication. Make sure that fear has been driven out. And one way to do this is to abolish numerical goals and slogans and focus on accomplishing the strategic intent of the organization. If you have a slogan on the wall, it's not living in the hearts of your people. So just get rid of it and model it, and instead have the leaders live it every day. Now, number 11 is to use statistical methods. This means that you use data to make decisions and to improve the systems. You remove the barriers to the pride of work. This could be things as job enlargement and helping people to understand how they're contributing to the overall organizational success. Number 13 is to institute a program of education and training. And this keeps the organization up to date with the latest methods, materials, and technologies. And then define management's permanent commitment to quality and productivity. Make sure that the commitment is clearly known. One of the origins of Deming was actually Frederick Taylor in his scientific management. And he had 4 principles that he implemented. And although Frederick Taylor has been maligned, the folks who have adopted his approach have not really understood what he was really all about, because if we look at these a little more closely, we can see that he really had at his heart a very integrated leadership element to his principles. The first principle was to develop a science for each element of employees' work that replaces sort of the old rule of thumb. In other words, analyze it by specific processes, methods, and information about those processes and methods, and then select, train, and teach and develop the worker around those processes and methods using information. Number 3 is very important because you want to cooperate with employees to ensure that all work is done properly. And this is where the followers of Taylor fall down. He didn't realize that what he was saying was that cooperation and by proxy leadership is really important, because leaders must make sure that all work is done properly by implementing a cooperative, more democratic workplace. And this is number 3 is the most overlooked part of scientific management. And number 4 is to divide the work and responsibility between management and employees so that the tasks are done in the most efficient way. And so what many managers have done is take sort of cherry-picked the 1, 2, and 4, maybe more like 1 and 4, and ignored 2 and 3. And what happens is you get the robotic workplace. This has this lack of understanding what Taylor was all about has resulted in the classical theorists and quantitative methods school of management. So this, at the same time, managers realized that there's something missing. So arose a more humanistic approach from Melton Mayo and some of those other practitioners. The human relations school of management, which generated something around behavioral sciences, which has come together be in the quality synthesis or total quality management. 2 of the practitioners are Toyota and Starbucks. When we see the Toyota vehicles, they are highly reliable, reasonable cost, although I personally think that Honda is doing a better job. And Starbucks is an excellent example of customer-focused quality and continuous improvement. So, if you have any questions, please post them in the Q&A thread. Otherwise, we'll see you on the class shell.